monarchy was all important across the world. The highest position and role for anyone in the land, monarchs and their families were symbols of civic duty, morality, and the finest living society could provide. However, across the 20th century, monarchies made way for republics, and royal families were never looked at the same. As the world wars took hold of the European continent, the British royal family had something of a problem: a firm German lineage. Yet this was just the beginning. The interwar period into World War II threw Britain's monarchy into a constitutional crisis. King Edward VIII would abdicate and show alarming sympathies towards Hitler's Germany. The stain of his sins would follow the House of Windsor for decades to come. Welcome to History on Fleek. Today we examine what it was like to be a royal Nazi. The British monarchy is an archaic institute surviving many centuries, and like monarchies much the same, it comes with a long history. One of the characteristics of any monarchy of the past was the desire to intermarry, sometimes between siblings, and often across the continent. In doing so, royal families and their wealth could be pooled and, the hope was, strengthened. However, the winds of change and the passage of time tend to be indifferent to people's plans, royal or not. Throughout the 19th century, the British monarchy was in its Victorian era, led by Queen Victoria and Albert. While a stalwart of the crown and its responsibilities, and an overseer of a great expansion of the British Empire, Queen Victoria would marry her cousin Albert. Not a particularly striking deal during the 19th century, yet Albert was born in Saxony, Germany, his family rooted in the country's aristocracy. This would mean that their offspring would be under the title and lineage of Albert. So their second-born Edward became King of England in 1901. He did so as Edward VII of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. This only caused murmurs and ruffled feathers in the British public's eye. Dare they suggest the British monarchy was inherently German? It would be close to 2 decades before the Germanic element in the royal lineage caused a stir. In 1917, with a world war in full swing and George V succeeding his father Edward VII, the anti-German sentiment began to riddle its way through Britain. The British royal family couldn't ignore the glaring Teutonic in their story and lineage, so they papered over those cracks as immediately as possible. The House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha was renamed to the rather more British House of Winsor, and the whole German aristocracy bloodline was forgotten, avoided, ignored. You get the picture. In 2015, the royal family's past came back to haunt them in the most unexpected of ways. Dug from an archive and found by possibly unscrupulous means, 82-year-old black and white video footage was brought to tabloid front pages. Unfortunately for the royal family, it was some evidently Nazi business. The home video shows 7-year-old Elizabeth and 3-year-old Margaret in the company of Uncle Edward. Filmed the year Adolf Hitler came to power, Edward is clearly instructing his compliant nieces to perform the Nazi salute, which they very much do. It goes without saying the footage caused quite a stir. Many royalists were quick to jump to the defense of the Queen, particularly on the grounds the footage was 82 years old and she was at the time 7. However, many were hardly surprised to witness the found footage, particularly the presence of Edward VIII showing Nazi association. The man had long been in the sights of many during his lifetime as an individual, with an uncomfortable ease with the Nazi regime. Oh, Eddie, King Edward VIII to be exact. He suffered a fate that a few would endure throughout history, being handed a crown he didn't really want. His unwanted succession followed a rather hopeless and short reign. Reportedly, he was only a headache all around as king. Politicians didn't trust him with sensitive documents. He was poor at collaborating with them anyhow. And he continually broke custom and tradition without realizing it. When Wallace Simpson, an American socialite, came into Edward's life, his decision to abdicate for love was, well, a relief to many in the establishment. His Nazi affiliations, come the late 1930s, had many alarm bells ringing. Maybe Edward VIII was a man of little reflection or guidance from those around him. Although, maybe he was just a fool. Against the advice of the British government and the extent of Nazi atrocity, still, an unclear, darkened cloud to the world. The abdicated king and his wife decided to tour Germany in 1937, graciously hosted by Hitler himself. The full works were put on for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. Welcoming crowds thousands deep, state dinners with Ribbentrop and Goebbels, and even exploring the conditions of the working class in war-baiting Germany. Edward VIII, Duke of Windsor, believed his trip was a mission of diplomacy, that he might bring peace between Britain and Germany. Most people at the time, and those since in retrospect, came to see the once king had been duped into Nazi propaganda. The discovery of highly classified documents by Allied soldiers in 1945 much changed the landscape of views on Edward VIII. Amazingly, the Marburg files would contain over 60 documented records of correspondence between the Nazi High Command and Edward VIII. As if this wasn't damning enough, the records showed much worse from the one-time King of England. The document found by American troops detailed Edward VIII, once a King of England, lobbying the Nazis for an exhaustive bombing campaign on the United Kingdom. A truly radical take on patriotism. Astoundingly, this was Edward's idea as to how to bring Britain and Germany to the negotiating table. Yep, the former king thought, bomb them all to hell, that'll get them talking. Not exactly a monarch's wisdom. This, if not any of the rest of Edward's actions, truly raised the specter that the man held genuine sympathies for the fascist Nazi ideology. So Edward was some kind of Nazi who just happened to be born into the wrong family? Well, not quite. It's murkier than that. Thanks to documents revealing the Nazi Operation Willy, it's difficult to outright call Edward VIII a Nazi. He signed nothing and aligned with nothing, never making any commitment to the National Socialist Party. Many call Edward VIII a Nazi sympathizer, yet frankly, looking at Operation Willy, the man was nothing more than a mark for them. Operation Willy was the code name for an SS plot to kidnap the former king and Wallace Simpson. Just 3 years after the Nazis had rolled out the red carpet and heaped praise on the royal pair, in 1940, they devised a plan to kidnap them. The thinking of the SS High Command was the once king, now dupe, could be persuaded to work alongside Hitler for peace negotiations with Britain. Much more terrifying though, Edward VIII was sought for the eventuality the Nazis would capture Britain and restore him as king. Needless to say, this and all other documents discovered in 1945 were buried and hidden from public sight. Most accounts have Winston Churchill as a highly protective party of Edward VIII, even though it cost him politically and by most accounts was not worth it. Yeah, it turns out that found footage has been a bit of a generational problem for the royal family. In 2005, it would not be the Queen herself, but one of her grandchildren embroiled in a Nazi scandal. The young Prince Harry, at the age of 20, decided to attend a fancy dress party in a head-to-toe Nazi officer's uniform. What exactly the motivations or self-reflection of Prince Harry was at the time, we may never know. Was he trying to cause a stir and show he didn't really care for his elevated status as an ignorant young man? Maybe. Was he making a very dry and aloof statement about his family's association with the Nazi regime historically? Maybe, but probably not. Either way, the front page of The Sun was the public's formal introduction to the prince in Nazi garbs. It didn't exactly do all that much good for the prince's public image. He's since called it one of the biggest mistakes of his life. He said following the event and the deluge of shame, he went and spoke to the chief rabbi in London and a Holocaust survivor in Berlin. Prince Harry profusely apologized for the choice and has done so ever since. And to think, this entire morass could have been avoided if he just didn't dress up as a Nazi. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.